I think it should definitely be approached as an omni-channel event now. As like you mentioned, Walmart and Target running simultaneous deals. I think that's super important to consider, and we're seeing the effects of that. And even in like consumer behavior, you're seeing people shop around and not necessarily assuming that the best price is always going to be on Amazon, and you're going to find those customers now, not solely on Amazon. They're making that purchase on other retailers too. So I definitely do think that that shift to omni-channel is real, and that the brands that are making the best use of the event are treating it like that too.
All right, everyone. I'm joined by Will today. This is Will's human in the loop and content debut at Teikametrics. So props to Will for getting put in the hot seat here. We're talking about Prime Day. Obviously, Prime Day is next week. And I wanted to talk about Prime Day in a little bit different of a way, I think, than we have in the past. The general question being, is Prime Day worth it? How important is Prime Day today? And talking through some strategies with that. So, Will, thank you for joining us today. I think we start with like a heavy hitting, high level question: is Prime Day still a must win moment, or is it just another kind of peak in what some people consider an always on calendar throughout the year?
Yeah, I think it can kind of be aspects of both. I think we definitely are in that always on calendar, and the promotional calendar is a little bit more crowded than it was, say, a couple of years ago. But at the same time, going into such a massive event like Prime Day and not treating it as a must win is kind of the wrong framing to have.
Hmm.
And seeing the growth and the record sales last year, I think you need to recognize how big and important of a moment it is, and how much of a launching pad it can be as well, leading out of Prime Day too. So I think there are elements of both, but that it still should be treated as a must win, to really get the most out of it.
Yeah. And just because I saw a couple messages from people last year saying like, hey, Prime Day didn't work for me. I think just because Prime Day doesn't work for somebody could be an indicator either of a strategy that didn't pull through or just a lot of different factors. But the fact that Prime Day itself was a record sales day for Amazon points to, I mean, all the factors that you talked about. Let's talk about omnichannel a little bit. So, Prime Day, obviously, of course, it's Amazon's thing, right? But is Prime Day still, as the years have gone on, omni-channel has increased in importance and relevance of maybe traffic on Amazon influencing traffic on other marketplaces as well? Do you think Prime Day is still mainly an Amazon event, or has it also kind of branched out into like an omni-channel moment for marketplaces, maybe like Walmart?
Yeah, I think it should definitely be approached as an omni-channel event now. As like you mentioned, Walmart and Target running simultaneous deals. I think that's super important to consider, and we're seeing the effects of that. And even in like consumer behavior, you're seeing people shop around and not necessarily assuming that the best price is always going to be on Amazon, and you're going to find those customers now, not solely on Amazon. They're making that purchase on other retailers too. So I definitely do think that that shift to omni-channel is real, and that the brands that are making the best use of the event are treating it like that too.
Hmm. It is kind of funny that it's like a forced holiday almost from Amazon. Like it's just a forced shopping holiday event for consumers. Speaking
Yeah,
of
definitely.
speaking of consumers, so I want to shift perspectives a little bit. Like you obviously have an interesting perspective because you're in the weeds. Like you're managing these deals, you're managing these brands leading into Prime Day. As a consumer, let's think about things from a consumer's perspective. A lot of consumers ask like, okay, are Prime Day deals actually like the best deals of the year? Are can you find a Prime Day deal during other times of the year like Q4? What do you think from that perspective? Are these deals actually good?
Yeah, they're definitely there. Anecdotally, just with brands that I've worked with, I know that there's some that put their best foot forward, and really slash the prices as much as they can to get that best deal there. But I think like comparing it to years past, it's maybe a situation where you have to dig a little bit more potentially.
Hmm.
And I know that there are stats out there that show sometimes maybe like from a big picture perspective, the price decreases aren't as large as they have been in years past. But all that being said, I think the deals still do exist. It's just kind of a different landscape, and more brands are also taking part in it too. So sometimes you're not necessarily seeing the deal only on like that big ticket purchase, like a
Yeah.
TV or some sort of electronic, but maybe it's on like an everyday consumable where that it's not, the price is low, so they're not dropping the price by hundreds of dollars, but they're dropping it by a few dollars, which is a pretty large percentage if it's a lower priced item.
Yeah, yeah. Asking you to generalize here, like obviously you're working with a number of brands. Are the deals this year, are you seeing deals? Is it different than last year? Is it the same? What are you seeing for the brands you're working with?
Yeah, it varies brand by brand and even in different markets as well. So I think there's a mix of both. It's hard to necessarily say, I think everybody's iterating and trying to improve. Brands that went into it and saw really good results are still sticking to what went well, but doubling down on the things that went particularly well and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there are other brands that are shifting too. So some that maybe didn't have as sharp of a decrease in terms of prices are leveling up and trying to give a better promotion and seeing how that goes this year.
Hmm.
So
It's
so
interesting.
yeah,
Just there are a lot of different levers that can be pulled as the years have gone on. The number of levers that can be pulled to increase sales on Prime Day has gone up. It's not just deals necessarily. That seems to be, of course, like the core part of Prime Day is like a good deal for products, but also what ads you're running, strategies you're running. So moving on, I think there's a good segue into what does success actually look like in Prime Day for Prime Day 2026? Is it a specific metric? Is it specific sales? Like what does success mean for brands?
yeah, I think it's gotten a little bit more complex over the years because of some of the factors that we mentioned too. The fact that the event's longer and now it's considered more of an omni-channel event too. So I still think that the more sophisticated brands were probably always looking at an approach where they were viewing Prime Day success over a larger window, and potentially even over across different retailers too. But I think that's even more important now when measuring success. When it was a condensed event, you could, even if you weren't necessarily managing your budget as effectively, the penalty wasn't as large because the event wasn't as long. But now it's really important to make sure that you're effectively managing that budget to have it spread across those 4 days, particularly making sure that you're taking advantage of that last day spike too.
Mm.
Um, and then also, I think more brands are becoming aware of how important the lead in and the lead out strategy is. So, succinctly, I think that success is really measured not just in the silo of Prime Day, but really in the events leading up to it and especially leading out of it as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see just how Prime Day has evolved since Amazon first started doing it, especially from a seller's perspective. But
Yeah.
piggybacking off of that idea of success, what would you say? What do you see brands maybe doing wrong, or what is the biggest mistake that you think brands make approaching Prime Day?
Yeah, I think it is kind of that siloed approach of just really honing in on just those days, those event days. Because if you're doing the work early, not only are you taking more off your plate and setting yourself up for more success and making it easier, but you're also probably going to see a compounding effect of more success too. Like you mentioned, there's so many different levers to pull. Implementing some of those early on in the lead-in strategy can really make things more effective, like sponsored brand, sponsored display, DSP, things like that.
Yep.
Can help just set you up for so much success. And then you can even tap into a lot of those tactics as well in the lead out. So
Mm.
I think that's sometimes a mistake when brands are only focused on the event days, and just seeing that as kind of like the specific time that they need to focus on when really it's a bit more than that.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder. And I think if we're gonna dive into the weeds just like a little bit more, we're talking pretty high level, and I think that's a good conversation to have for Prime Day this year. But just going like a step further, a lot of people ask, a lot of brands ask about DSP, like how maybe they should be leveraging DSP when it comes to Prime Day. I think the nature of DSP lends itself to be a pretty successful lever, or has the potential to be for Prime Day. How do you think brands should be approaching it? How are you approaching with the brands that you're helping to approach or to get ready for Prime Day?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think it's super relevant and helpful for Prime Day specifically. And I think particularly in those lead in and lead out times. So leading in, you can lean on DSP to target relevant audiences to really drive that brand awareness and become top of mind for consumers heading into the event. So that way, on the day of the event, while you're investing in sponsored products, which is lower down the funnel, you're getting a lot more of those searches and you're just more top of mind for people to click on those ads. And then as well, in the lead out time, you can also use DSP to potentially retarget. Depending on what you're selling, you could either target purchasers, recent purchasers who maybe are like looking to make a repeat purchase if it's more of a consumable product, or if it's a one-time purchase, maybe those consumers who viewed your PDP but didn't make that purchase on Prime Day. Then you can target them later on and actually do it for a more affordable cost because you're not in that really competitive Prime Day time where
Mm.
paying for that impression of that click is even more expensive.
Yeah, nice. I want to open the door for any other ad type that you think is worth mentioning here. Obviously, DSP is a big one, but like people ask about streaming TV, people ask about sponsored product, and any other relevant ad types that you would want to throw in the bucket of consideration on top of DSP for Prime Day.
Yeah, like you mentioned, sponsored products. Certainly, you definitely want to check that box and make sure that you're running that to a very large capacity, especially during those Prime Day events, to capture a lot of that interest and demand. Streaming TV is another interesting one that you mentioned too. That's a relatively new tactic that's been opened up to more brands. I do think it's kind of an interesting play. You kind of want to make sure you have other boxes checked potentially before you do that. You want to make sure that you have a good creative that's warrants the attention that you're getting on that big screen placement, which is awesome. But you just want to make sure that you're properly leveraging that, and
Mm.
also that you're driving to a page that does its job in terms of converting. So you just want to make sure that you have the boxes checked in terms of good inventory, good review rating, things like that. But once you have all those in place, which probably would be covered if you've already developed a strategy that's implementing sponsored product, sponsored brand, things like that, you probably already have those boxes checked. And it's really interesting to take a look at streaming TV
Mm.
um, because it's definitely a very interesting tactic.
Yeah. I want to approach another question here, and you feel free to take your time to think about this, but has anything surprised you personally as we've gotten into Prime Day? We're in the weeds right now. Obviously, Prime Day is next week. So it's like it's probably, it's go time for the lead in, and obviously there's lead out strategy and whatnot. But what has surprised you the most about Prime Day this year?
Partially more of I think that the brands that we work with, and it's a two-way street. It's also the conversation that we're driving to, but I think there is more focus on omni-channel
Hmm.
this year, and maybe that's a trend that will continue too. So Amazon and Prime Day specifically, um, is a major focus. But I think that brands more so than last year and definitely years past as well are making sure that they're covering their bases on other retailers too, and making sure that it's not necessarily just checking the box. Having more of
Yeah.
a concerted effort in terms of strategy on those retailers as well.
Hmm. That's good. I think Prime Day as a seller, I mean, we've both been in the space probably for a decent amount of time. Prime Day, in my opinion, is a direct reflection of just other things that go on in the year. It's a reflection of a seller's strategy, of a seller's desire, how they want to grow. It's no surprise to me that omnichannel is not new to Prime Day, and omnichannel has been a growing conversation across e-commerce for a couple of years now. But as time has gone on, it's just increased in importance. Brands have stepped into that omnichannel conversation more and more and more for different marketplaces too. Walmart is big, but TikTok is now a part of that conversation as well. I It's no surprise to me that this year specifically brands are developing their strategy a bit more in that way. So one last question for you, Will. Where do you think all this goes next? Like, is what does the future of Prime Day look like for sellers, 2027 and beyond? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see first off, but yeah, it's hard to imagine that anything will kind of slow down. I feel like everything's getting bigger. But then we also have that like always on approach and the crowded promotional strategy or promotional calendar, and wondering if that's necessarily like watering down some of these big tentpole events and those kind of being like conflicting um, ideas. But at the same time, I just have a hard time believing that Prime Day and these events will get any smaller.
Yeah.
And I think also the trend of kind of the fact that a few years ago it was more focused on like those big ticket items, like I mentioned, like more electronics, and now that it's going into other everyday items, I think that's going to continue. And we're already seeing that most brands are really aware and diving headfirst with Prime Day.
Mm.
But I think that um, that's not going to slow down to any degree. I think really every brand and every type of product is going to be involved in these events
Yeah.
moving forward too.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. Especially as, I mean, as the strategies change, as the levers evolve and change, as DSP evolves, as all those levers change and grow, brands' abilities to navigate around Prime Day will change as well. I don't think it's going to get any smaller either. You add omnichannel into that and distribution of content across platforms like TikTok, just with more ways to get more advertising or information out about a deal or product. Like it's just going to keep on growing, I think. um all that being said, this is a great conversation. Obviously Prime Days next week. Good luck to everyone as you prepare for the big one. But Will, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and hope to have you back again someday in the future for content. But thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the conversation.